If you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles, if you've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies, if you're trying to fill the same old holes inside, well, there's a better life. Well, there's a better life. If you got pain, he's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night. We've all found ourselves worn out from the same old fight. We've all run to things we know that just ain't right. When there's a better life, yeah, there's a better life. If you got pain, he's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you got chains, he's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, well, he's a chain breaker.
Hello everyone, good morning, and welcome to our service today. My name is Joshua Burley, for those of you who don't know, and I'm the summer student working at Cornerstone Community Church in Lively. I've been working at the church now for about 4 weeks, and throughout that time I've been able to get to know some of you a little bit, and I know that you've been able to get to know me a little bit. But one thing that I thought I would do this morning is share one more fun fact about who I am with you guys. And that fact is that I love facts. And so what I wanted to do just quickly this morning is share a couple fun facts with you to start our service off. So here we go. Here's the first one. Did you know that some dogs are actually allergic to cats? I myself am definitely also allergic to cats. Okay, here's the second one. Did you know that 100 billion servings of instant ramen noodles are sold every year? That's 14 bowls for every person in the whole world. With being a Bible college student, I definitely contributed to that number substantially this year. Okay, here's the last fun fact. Did you know that hundreds of years ago, people played tennis with their bare hands? So that's a little bit about me, and now I want to share a little bit about the service this morning. If you need to give your tithes and offerings, feel free to go to cornerstonelively.com and click on the Give button. That will send you to a page that outlines all the ways that you can give and how that would work for you. But if you're a guest and you're visiting, what we'd actually like you to do is also go to the website, but click on the I'm New button, what that'll do is it'll send you to a page where you fill out some information for us just so that we can get to know you a little bit. And then what we'll do is we'll send a donation to a charity in the area, in the Sudbury area, in your name. We just want to get to know you guys and connect, because obviously it's a lot harder to do during this time. This morning for our service, we're going to sing a worship song together, and then Pastor Kyle is actually going to start on his series about Revelation, what that book is actually talking about, and how does it relate to maybe some of the things that are going on today that seem a little bit crazy, and that some people would say it is the end of the world. And he'll be able to answer some of the questions that we have around that, which I'm definitely looking forward to. One thing that we're also starting during this service, and we'll be implementing it in services to come, is we'll have a number that you can text. It's actually the church's number. It's 705-692-1658. And when you text that number, we'll receive it during the service. So we'd encourage you to send prayer requests or questions that you have. Maybe if you give your heart to Jesus, you can send it that way. We want to be able to interact with you as best that we can during the service. So feel free to send something through that number. And just as always in every service, we encourage you to share this link to your friends on whatever social media you're viewing this on, as well as to invite people out and engage with it. If you do have a prayer request, send it in the comments. We would love to pray for you live during the service. So as I said, at this time we're going to go into some worship, and again, thank you for joining us for this service this morning.
the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I will stand and sing. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me and I will stand and sing. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
Hey guys, my name's Kyle and I'm the pastor here at Cornerstone Community Church in Lively, Ontario. So glad that you chose to join us today. Hey, want to let you know this week that somebody told me that their favorite part of gathering with us virtually on Sundays is my hair. They said that watching this thing on the top of my head makes them feel better about themselves. And I gotta tell you that comment didn't actually make me feel better about myself. I am very much looking forward to the day that I get to visit my barber again. You know, in the next couple of weeks, if it gets a little too crazy, I might put a hat on just so it doesn't become a distraction. I'm just not brave enough yet to hand the scissors over to my wife for a COVID-19 cut. Look, if you've done that, why don't you just throw a photo up in the comments section or tag us on our social feeds later on today, and we'll have a chance to just kind of laugh with one another. I want to thank you, church. If you're a part of Cornerstone Community Church, I want to let you know that I'm proud of you. Man, this week we had an opportunity to just be the church and serve our community and the people in need in our community. And you guys stepped up to the plate. It was amazing. We partnered with our city and we were able to give away 150 masks for people who needed them. We raised $450 for the Maison McCullough Hospice here in Sudbury. And we also collected a ridiculous amount of clothing for the Samaritan Center to hand out to the homeless people in our community. And I just want to say thank you and let you know that was incredible, and it's served and it's touched so many people already. I want to say thank you so much for being a part of that. You know, we're going to kick off a series of conversations today called Is This the End? We are going to have a biblical perspective, this conversation of a biblical perspective of what's going on in our world today. And we're really looking at the book of Revelation. Now, I don't know how that makes you feel. I know that some people get nervous when we mention Revelation, and I can only speak for myself, but honestly, there have been moments where I didn't want to have this talk because in the past, at least, it has served as something that's been very divisive, even inside the church. And one of our values is that we love loudly. That means that we fight for unity. And so my natural tendency is going to be to speak more towards unity than it is against division. And so on my own, I didn't want to talk about this, but I had a moment where I realized how necessary it was. And honestly, I was watching Waco on Netflix. I don't know how you feel about the fact that your pastor watched Waco on Netflix, but I got to tell you, it was an incredibly powerful story. And it was so tragic as well, this Waco tragedy. And I realized that this was all founded in an interpretation of the book of Revelation. Look, I've received so many emails and phone calls and Facebook messages and links to YouTube videos that have millions of hits just asking these questions about conspiracy theories and the end of the world. And is this pardon me, is this exactly what God was talking about in the book of Revelation? Is this the end of the world? I don't know what you think of when you hear the word Revelation, but the very first word in the book of Revelation is apocalypsis, this apocalyptic book. That's the type of literature that it is. And when I think of apocalypse, I think of, zombie movies or Armageddon, but that actually has nothing to do with what that word really means. It means to reveal. It means that God is revealing a truth to his church. And so the question that we have to ask is, what is that truth? Well, I think there are a few things that we want to land on, just some key ideas that I want to encourage you with today, because our main point is that fear is not the foundation of revelation. Jesus is. You do not need to fear in the middle of crazy, difficult times. You also do not need to be surprised in crazy, difficult world events. And you do not need to lose hope in crazy, difficult times. Look, I just want to throw a disclaimer out there is that I understand that there are so many different perspectives and viewpoints on the book of Revelation. And our hope, our intention is not to throw shade or to dishonor any view that might differ from what we think. I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I do hope that in our conversation that we are able to establish a framework of understanding what God is actually saying, how we can interpret that and apply it to our world today, and then leave you to make the decision on how you're applying that to your life. We don't want to dishonor anybody. We don't want to throw any shade, but we do firmly believe that God's truth needs to be true for all generations and not just one. Look, it is our hope that in the midst of this crisis, in the midst of this series of discussions, that you would be encouraged, not discouraged, that you would find hope and clarity and truth and not confusion. Look, with all of that said, I want to give you a little bit of a background on the book of Revelation itself. So check this out. We'll get back in just a second.
The Book of the Revelation of Jesus. The author of this book, which is not called Revelations, by the way, is named at the beginning. It was written by John, which could refer to the beloved disciple who wrote the Gospel and the letters of John, or it could be a different John, a messianic Jewish prophet who traveled about and taught in the early church. Whichever John it was, he makes clear in the opening paragraph what kind of book he has written. He calls it, first of all, a revelation or apocalypse. The Greek word is apokalypsis, and it refers to a type of literature very familiar to John's readers from the Hebrew Scriptures and from other popular Jewish texts. Apocalypses recounted a prophet's symbolic dreams and visions that revealed God's heavenly perspective on history and current events so that the present could be viewed in light of history's final outcome. And John says this apocalypse is a prophecy, which means it's a word from God spoken through a prophet to God's people, usually to warn or comfort them in a time of crisis. By calling this book a prophecy, John's saying that it stands in the tradition of the biblical prophets and is bringing their message to a climax. And this apocalyptic prophecy was sent to real people that John knew. The book opens and closes as a circular letter that was sent to 7 churches in the ancient Roman province of Asia.
Okay, guys, just to recap. John, this real person, is writing a real letter to real people in order to encourage them in the midst of persecution. And look, I know that some people have said that we are experiencing persecution right now as faithful people in North America. And I gotta say, I understand every once in a while your Facebook post is censored, but it's not a fair comparison as we look back to the ancient church of the first century. I mean, these are people like John who are being isolated. They're being cast off and exiled for telling other people about Jesus. They're being killed. In fact, the persecution of the church and followers of Jesus was so great that unless you trusted Jesus with your whole heart, there's no reasonable belief that the church was going to outlive the Roman Empire. And so John, from his imprisonment, is trying to encourage the church because in the midst of all of that persecution, there's this internal fighting that's beginning to happen. There's division that's rising up in the middle of the world events that are happening around them, because they're beginning to say to one another, guys, if we were to just compromise in our faith, then this persecution that we're experiencing, it would soften up. And so John is trying to encourage them and give them hope and say, no, fight the good fight. Hope is here. You can have victory, that Jesus is going to outlive the Roman Empire. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that in your life where you just needed that bolt, that encouragement, a reminder that hope is coming. Hope is there, that the end is near in order to keep going. Before I had kids, I really enjoyed long distance running, and so I signed up for a few half marathons, and I really enjoyed the first 3 quarters of those half marathons. And in the last quarter of them, I would always say to myself and kind of reflect on the terrible life choices that I've made up until that point that have led me to be running at 16 kilometers to 21. And so I remember the first half marathon that I ever raced. And it was really going well until about halfway through, and it got rainy and cold and windy, and I had my glasses on, and I'm basically blind without my glasses, and so they're fogging up and I can't see where I'm going, and so I'm taking them off and putting them back on and doing the windshield wiper thing. And I just felt so uncomfortable, and I hated that I had decided to be a part of this race. Well, that was until I turned the corner and I got to the place where the fans were standing. I moved out of this place of isolation where I'm running on my own, and now I'm surrounded by people who are there to encourage me and saying, you can do it. Stay strong, keep going, the end is near. And this is exactly what John is trying to do for the church. So let's take a look. Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. It says this, the revelation of Jesus Christ. We ask that question, what is God revealing? Well, Jesus. That this is all about Jesus. The foundation of Revelation is not fear, it's Jesus. He goes on and he says, which God gave him to show to his servants the things that must soon take place. Now listen, the things that are going to take place are not entirely pleasant, and we understand that, and some of the things that are taking place today are not entirely pleasant. But if we're following Jesus and we believe what his word says, we also know that the Bible tells us that God works together all things for the good of those who love him. And so if this is something that must take place, it's actually a part of God's plan. And so we can be encouraged in the midst of difficult things that sometimes must take place. Why? Because there will be a good result. Second thing that's really important, I want to show you, Revelation 1, verse 3. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. And blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. I really feel like there's this idea that if we were to hear and we were to respond to and we were to say out loud these words, Revelation says of itself that there should be a blessing, that there should be an encouragement. And so if we're interpreting Revelation and our response is fear, I wonder if maybe we're missing a point. You see, Revelation is a letter that is rooted in the past, written by John for a generation, and that applies to us today. What is it revealing? That God is working for our good despite all that we experience. That's what he's saying to the early church as well, that God is in control and that Jesus is the foundation. Okay, so we have to ask the question, how does this apply to my life right now, today? All right, a real letter written by a real person to a real specific group of people. How is it that this holds any value for my life today? Well, that's a fair question. What we need to understand is that John is not trying to stimulate interest. He's not trying to give us trivia. He's trying to stimulate and lead to a response. What you need to understand is that in the Bible, when you read hearing, it's the same as heeding. That there is this expected response of hearing the word of God, not just being a hearer of the word, but being a doer of the word. In fact, John tells us to take this to heart. That's his way of saying, guys, take this seriously and do something about it. All right, so here in this introduction that he gives us, Revelation chapter 1, he's doing what all good letter writers do. They provide an introduction that, introduces the key characters, Jesus. It gives us some of the images and some of the themes. And so he's beginning to do that. And if we were to only read chapter 1, you'd probably find that it's really manageable. That even if you have like the smallest amount of knowledge of the Bible or the Old Testament, that these symbols and these pictures, they're not challenging, that you can understand them. And even the ones that maybe you don't understand, John interprets them himself for you and tells you exactly what they mean. It's as if John is saying to us, guys, before you get into all of the minutia, before you go down the rabbit hole and you start exploring what all of these images mean, and the marks and the numbers and the beast, which we will talk about, before you get into all of that, you need to understand what is true yesterday, today, and tomorrow, before, during, and after crisis and persecution. And what is it that is true in all of those scenarios? It's that Jesus is the foundation, and that you don't need to be fearful, that you shouldn't be surprised, and you don't need to lose hope. Why? Because Jesus is the foundation, and he is right there with you. All right? You do not need to fear. Let's look. Revelation chapter 1, verse 17. It's this, story, it's this moment that John sees Jesus, and he's responding with fear. The Bible tells us that he's falling down as if he's dead because he's fearful. And then there's this beautiful moment where Jesus says this. Jesus laid his right hand on him, saying, "Fear not, I am the first and the last." It's this picture that, yes, things are hard. Yes, there are things that naturally inspire fear, but I am right here with you. My son is 5 years old, and he has a few phobias. And, they're honestly not based in any sort of reason. I mean, he hasn't had a negative experience that would cause trauma that would lead to these phobias, but he's afraid of some things that I feel, honestly, I hope he's not in the room, they're kind of ridiculous. However, I can respond in two ways. Number one, I can say, buck up, son, just get over it. And I'll tell you how well that goes. You can probably imagine not too great. The other response, which I choose to do, is to sit beside him and say, Asher, I know you're worried, but I want you to know that I'm here with you. And do you know what I see in you, buddy? That you are courageous, and that you are brave, and that you are not on your own. Asher, would you like me to hold your hand as you try this? And he says, yeah. And we get through it together. And that's the picture that Jesus is giving us here in this revelation about him, that in the midst of crisis, we do not need to be fearful because he is the foundation and he's there holding our hands. Second thing, guys, you do not need to be surprised by crazy, difficult world events. They are going to happen. Look, the reality is that this is not the first pandemic in the world. Now, it's different than all of the others, but we're not here for the very first time in terms of world history. We can expect that, rainy days are going to happen. And so we should not be surprised by those things. In fact, the Bible tells us that they are going to happen. Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, it says, "Do not fear what you are about to suffer." And then it goes on, we're going to jump down a bit, it says, "Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." Look, Jesus is saying, don't be surprised about these things that honestly, guys, you might not like, they're not great, but there is a reward. There is a better side. There's this picture that somebody used that helped me understand this. And it's like when you get a report back from your teacher and you were expecting to get a good report, a good grade, and you didn't. Now look, your teacher, if they're a good teacher, they're not giving you that report to tell you how terrible you are. They're giving you that report to say, guys, you can do better. That there is a way for you to improve here, that there is an opportunity. You know, I have the opportunity actually in my life that when we're not in the middle of COVID-19, that I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I've had the privilege to actually help and train military personnel and, some defensive tactic officers and, OPP and local city police around the province. And it's amazing. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is that when you train for a worst case scenario, that worst case scenarios cease to exist. Look, it's not fear-mongering for us to say it's really possible that somebody at some point might try to hurt you. And so we're going to prepare ourselves for that eventuality, not wishing for it to happen, but preparing in case it might. And because we've trained for it, it's no longer a worst case scenario. It ceases to exist. And so guys, we're not going to be surprised. We're actually going to ask the question, what is the opportunity here? And I hope this doesn't sound too dark, but in the middle of crisis, I get excited because I see it as an opportunity for the church to be the church. In fact, all spiritual revival have come out of moments of crisis. So I'm not going to be afraid. I am not going to be surprised. And lastly, I'm not going to lose hope. Look, we know the beginning of the story. We know the end of the story, and we also know in the middle of those crises that it feels hopeless. I want to read you today Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. It's my favorite verse in the Bible. It says this, "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away." Guys, that to me just provides such a picture of hope. That when we are in the middle of crisis, in the middle of the story where it's easy to lose hope, God is reminding us that the end, that He is victorious, that good triumphs over evil. I'll tell you one more story. Immediately before this crisis hit, it was actually the day that the schools announced that they were going to shut down after March break. I was at a meeting. There were probably about 30 or 40 pastors there. And we were playing this game. It was kind of silly, where we had to pick a name of a song, the title of a song, out of this bowl. And then we had to, without any preparation, preach a 1-minute sermon with a scripture reference based on the title of that song. And maybe we'll play that game one day here as well, because it's kind of funny and embarrassing every once in a while. But this was, I forget the name of the song that I got, but this actually, Revelation 21:4, was the verse that came to mind. I said, guys, we're in the middle of people feeling afraid right now. And we're discouraged and we're anxious and that's going on all around us. In fact, most people in this room were more scared about putting their hand in a communal bowl than they were about speaking with absolutely no preparation in front of a group of 40 people. But I want to tell you what the Bible says. That God tells us that there is a day that's coming where there will be no more pain, where there will be no more tears, that all of the old will have passed away and the new will come. And guys, that just fills me with so much hope. The easiest place for you to lose hope is in the middle. And so in the middle, Jesus comes and reveals a truth to His church that you do not need to be afraid, you do not need to be surprised, and you do not need to lose hope, because fear is not the foundation, Jesus is. So the truth is that in the middle of all of this, that there is actually an invitation for you to partner with God in the restoration of this world. That's why Jesus taught us to pray, God, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. John chapter 16, verse 33 says, Jesus says these things. He says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world there will be trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Look, we need to come back to this idea that fear is not the foundation of revelation. Jesus is. And so I want to tell you today that any interpretation of the book of Revelation that inspires fear, that inspires panic, that inspires confusion or anxiety, it misses the point, because Jesus is the foundation of this book. Look, I want to give you some practical next steps that you can take. And maybe as we've been having this conversation, you would say that you can identify some areas in your life where you have become fearful, that you have responded with anxiety and fear and panic. And maybe that is specifically in response to the conspiracies surrounding the end of the world that are so popular right now. I wonder if you just ask yourself the question, when you embrace the truth that this isn't a surprise to God, that God is in control, that you don't need to be afraid or surprised or lose hope, how does that change the way that you live your life today? Now, maybe as a response, you can just type in the comment section right now as you're watching, I won't be afraid. Maybe you want to say, I won't be surprised, or I won't lose hope. And you can go ahead and do that just as a declaration of truth over your own life. Maybe you feel like you can't do that because it just hasn't been true for you, and you have more questions and you need somebody to pray with you. And I want to let you know that we're here to do that. And so if you text us at 705-692-1658, somebody from our teams is going to be able to connect with you in the next 24 hours and just walk with you through those conversations that you want to have and pray alongside of you. Maybe if you've never said yes to Jesus before, and man, the conspiracies are just getting to you, and the whole faith aspect of what we've been talking about, it's been confusing, but maybe there's a little bit of your heart that would say today, I would like to experience peace in the midst of a storm. I want to tell you the truth that God loves you so much that he sent Jesus to die for you and to pay the price for your sin so that you could experience peace and live in eternal relationship with him. Live life to the full. So if that's you today, I want to invite you to pray along with me. And you can pray the same words as me. You can pause the video and make it your own. It's really not the words in particular that are powerful, but rather your response to the word of God and just saying yes to Jesus. So Jesus, we just say yes to you today. We understand that you paid the price for our sin, that you died for us, and because of what you have done for us, that we can have hope, that we can have life. And so we say thank you. And we don't just hear your word, but we heed it. We respond to it. So I just want to say, if you made that decision today, it's the best decision that you can ever make. I'd love for you to text us. Again, 705-692-1658. And let us know that you've made that decision to say yes to Jesus. And we're going to come alongside you and celebrate with you. That would be absolutely amazing. Guys, I want you to remember that as we get into the meaty, the kind of deeper aspects of the book of Revelation, which we will in the coming weeks, I want to remind you that fear is not the foundation. Jesus is. So this week, guys, remember that. Do not fear. Do not be surprised. Do not lose hope. And hey, if you want some extra credit assignment, read Revelation 1-3 in order to be ready for next Sunday morning. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you very soon.
If you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles, if you've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies, if you're trying to fill the same old holes inside, well, there's a better life. Well, there's a better life. If you got pain, he's He's a pain taker. If you feel lost, He's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, He's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, He's a chain breaker. We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night. We've all found ourselves worn out from the same old fight. We've all run to things we know that just ain't right. When there's a better life, yeah, there's a better life. If you got pain, He's a pain taker. If you feel lost, He's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, He's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, He's a chain breaker. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify.
Testify.
If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify.
Testify.
If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify.
Testify.
If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify.
Testify.
If you got chains, He's a pain taker. If you feel lost, He's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, He's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, He's a chain breaker. If you need freedom or saving, He's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, well, He's a chain breaker.